Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about a review title I was introduced to vis-a-vis Indie Boost and the developer Ezekiel Rage. Namely, retro-flavored action-adventure Citadale, the Ancestral Strain. Find out if this adventure slays, or if I found the experience altogether draining. What a terrible night for a curse. Or for a vampiric overlord to rise from the grave and decide he has beef with your family still. Ancestral Strain is the latest in a corte of action adventures, but if you're hoping for some narration to tie things together, look elsewhere, as the sum of what you'll be introduced to story-wise amounts to some scrolling text before you hit start. Alright, so Citadale is a stage-based action-adventure that gets pretty heavy on the platforming side. It also happens to start things off with one of my friggin' banes, as it summarily decides that keyboard bindings are for chumps and obliges you to use X, C, and V for your shield, jump, and attack buttons. Not that the game ever actually tells you the controls or anything. I need to figure those out for myself, alongside special attacks requiring you to hold up an attack to use. There's also the slide ability tied to the jump button by pressing down and jump. You also get no indication that it exists. So off to a good start. And speaking of starts, further insult to injury came when I tried to return to the menu from the options screen. However, as the game's a bit janky and likes to immediately close itself if you choose that option, just the greatest starts here. Get that all out of the way, however, and you can dive into the meat of the game. To begin, although the controls don't take too much to get used to, the way the character handles does leave a fair bit to be desired. Blocking can be useful, but it's a bit finicky, making it overall more useful to dodge. In that respect, the slide's pretty great. Moreover, the basic attack has some fairly pathetic range, which, in tandem with certain enemies exploding and damaging you when they die, leaves even more to be desired. And that's another thing, even as I progressed through the various stages, the overall enemy variety was lacking. It wasn't long before I'd effectively seen the crux of what was being tossed at me. Whilst this in itself could be forgiven if there was interesting, compelling level design, what I ended up coming across was long, slogging jaunts through levels whose designs made me frequently feel as though they're explicitly built to be tedious. This is especially notable as later stages begin to become riddled with, instant death pits, which you need to navigate by jumping across platforms, which nearly instantly collapse if you step on them, requiring perfect timing to progress and more or less forcing you to reset from the very beginning of the stage over and over again if you mess up. Oh, and as an aside, the jump is also fairly stiff in general, so even if there isn't the looming threat of instant death, you can expect to find yourself dealing with those obnoxious platforms in other stages and being sent hurtling to the start. Or just having your attack abruptly cancelled because if you happen to jump in a narrow confine, hitting a ceiling resets your animations abruptly and not in a way that favors you. Honestly, it really was the platforming that killed it the most for me, whilst it did feel fairly mediocre throughout, especially with the game's lackluster enemy variety, shrug-worthy combat, and fondness for having bosses that just vomit bouncing projectiles at you in ever-increasing numbers at the end of each stage. Platforming, and especially the game's Magic Tower stage, are where the game devolved into an outright, just odious and unenjoyable slog. Who would even think this is a good idea? Do you have seizures? Boy, do we have a game for you. Oh my god. I can't fucking see. You piece. That said, as much as there's a lot of things that frustrate me deeply in regards to Citadel's gameplay, I did absolutely dig the soundtrack. It's honestly really rewarding to hear a lot of the game's themes and part of what kept me going. And hey, if you're a fan of Castlevania, the general vibe of these themes comes off as quite similar in the best way possible. The only issue I have is that the game doesn't let you adjust the volume for sound effects or music in-game, so you'll need to use your volume mixer for that. Graphically, the game's alright looking, though there's a few instances where the hitboxes of enemies were a little bit unclear. This is especially notable in some of the bosses. If anything, my largest issue visually came up in the Magic Tower level, which basically decided that the best way to promote challenging gameplay was to smear the screen with rainbow unicorn barf, namely obscuring everything behind a haze of seizure-inducing fog. You know, in a lengthy level that was already chock full of instant death pits and collapsing platforms. Because obscuring them makes for fun and dynamic gameplay. So, if it isn't abundantly clear by this point, I'm not really a fan of this game. Between lacking functionality, monotonous gameplay, and level design decisions which seem to be specifically oriented around alternatively dragging out a stage's length unnecessarily, or cheaply murdering the player, it's really not often that I put down a game before I beat it, but there was little joy to be found in this title for me, with the Magic Tower stage and its vast array of utterly ruinous visual gimmicks paired with instantaneous death being the proverbial cherry on a crap cake. Which is personally why I rate this title as a fail. I don't tend to toss these ratings out often, but I can't think of a time where I would recommend this game to anyone, unless they took some sort of perverse joy out of punishing themselves and having a bad time. Anyways, now that that's off my chest, to the viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or our Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and that bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord. You can click the link in the banner or the description so you can become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we have a coffee running now to help supplement funds for our lovely editor Jack, and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content, by not starving to death in the meanwhile. Again, check the description and the banner for them links. Anywho, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care until then, folks.